something that popped in my mind when we were talking about doing this episode was that it is when we're bouncing off of each other, you become like each other. It's like a marriage. You become like each other over time. And so just like, the stories that I know will be a Tommy thing, and I'll introduce things knowing that Tommy will be interested in them, but also because I'm interested in them. And so that it becomes the Venn diagram gets wider and wider, and eventually we'll be the same person. And then we're one big story fella.
Hello and welcome to StoryFellas, a podcast where we make stories and we break stories. I'm your host, Tommy Antonucci.
And I'm your host, Zach Lovelace.
And hey, we are here at a milestone at episode 21.
Oh yeah, we are officially able to drink.
That was my joke, man. I was going to make that joke and then you beat me to it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about that joke earlier and I was I'm going to make that joke when we record tonight. I just want to give you a little breathing space.
You're coasting to make a joke. Me. You're coasting.
Just every episode, whenever you make a joke, I'm like, I was going to make that joke. I was setting something up.
Yeah, exactly. I was setting something up. The typical Smash Bros. I was setting something up. Oh, give me one of your stocks.
For all our Smash Bro fans out there. But yeah, we're here. Today's going to be a slightly different episode because we have done 20 stories out of thin air or out of a basic scrap or something. So we wanted to take some time today and reflect and have a little bit of a 20 episode look back. And if you are new to the podcast, or if you've only listened to a handful, this might be a good milestone. We're going to go over some past stuff we did and see what you're excited about and see what we're excited about.
It's a good little rest stop where you can just come chill with us, get to know Tommy and Zach a little bit, and get to hear us not talk about stories in the story game fashion, but rather just as two dudes that, we're not gods, like we're not untouchable. Okay. This is an episode to remind you that we're human. Right. So,
anyway. No, absolutely. We are mere mortals following this podcast.
You can stop sending your worship emails to us. Okay. This is perfunctory.
Oh man. But yeah, we're going to start off this episode. We were going to go through these last 20 episodes that we've done and give you a little snippet. So if you've not heard about these, maybe this is the time you're like, hey, I want to go revisit that story. Yeah. And we're going to share a little bit of our highlights from what we liked about telling that story way back when.
I mean, we've been doing it since November of 2023. So that kind of puts it in perspective. Tommy and I mean, we kind of are shocked that we've been able to crank out this many episodes, this many stories.
We just think story now. It's funny.
No, I don't.
He does. He doesn't think story anymore. I was chatting with my wife the other day about a project that I'm wanting to do. And it kind of, the conversation turned into what we do. Kind of just cool. Micro StoryFellas. I was like, this feels like StoryFellas because I was trying to workshop. I had roadblocks in my story that I was working on, and then we kind of unlocked a few things. And I was like, man, this is so helpful to just bounce it back and forth and figure out what works.
I love that.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys are learning little tricks of the trade. Let's go through the list right here. We won't belabor it. We'll just kind of fly through. I'll start with leading our episode 1 was Into NVIDIA, which was a story about a crew that lands on Mars, or they are doing a little expedition on Mars to find frozen in the ice is an Antarctic expedition, all the materials there, and it creates a story. How did get there.
They find a big ship, but there's nobody there. They find a dog that's been exploded.
Yep, I do remember the exploded dog. But and Zach is an Antarctic expedition guy. Not that he's doing it, but he likes it. Yeah.
I hope one day. I hope one day to visit the final continent. But no, yes, it is definitely has a little bit of a Zach Lovelace stink on it. It's a sci-fi. It's serious. And it's a survival story. So if you are into that kind of thing, into The Martian, I can't remember exactly what two movies we combined, but it's like The Terror, the TV show on AMC meets The Martian. Maybe a little less funny than The Martian. It's a pretty like witty movie, but if that's your cup of tea, I enjoyed it obviously because I like history. I like the Antarctic.
I thought it was really fun. I thought having the stakes of real life human stuff on a planet far away is really interesting. But looking back, Zach, what is something that stood out in that storytelling session that you really liked?
I think
if you remember it all.
Yeah, I remember. The initial prompt was a compass that points to something important. And I think it was one of the first times, obviously, that we deviated like harsh from the prompt. And I think that actually helped us. And that's something that you kind of talked about with your conversation you had with your wife. And then what came to my mind was the other day I had a conversation at work where I was just ideating and I was just spitting and like nobody could say anything to me. They couldn't stop me, dude. But no, like no wasn't a word. Like I wasn't stopped by anything. I had just like a very clear, like, okay, if that doesn't work, then maybe this. If that doesn't work, then maybe this. And I do feel that first initial like breath of fresh air being like, okay, the prompt is not sacred. We can just use it to jump. So I think that was one of the biggest things from that session that stood out to me that we even maybe remarked on in that episode.
Yeah, I think that is same. Before you answered, I felt the same way, is that we started with this compass and it was not really working until I think you threw out the idea, what if it's on Mars? And then it all clicked and I was like, yeah, no, that's it. I think that's the thing that's the extra sauce we need. But guys, into NVIDIA, if you wanted to check that out, Zach, do you want to tell them a little bit about your scrap episode 2, Megalophilia?
Yeah, so this idea was a scrap, so it was not the story game that we initially do, which is like an improv type thing. This was an idea that I've had for a long time that I, for whatever reason, couldn't develop into anything more meaty. But the idea follows this general logline that a giant kaiju is traversing the country and anyone who lays eyes on it goes mad. Still, certain groups flock to the monster, like wanting to see it and experience this for themselves. And the general plot of it is that a man follows his daughter who wants to see this creature. So this idea that this kind of eldritch H.P. Lovecraft, you see it, you go mad type thing, take on a kaiju, I think is really compelling to me. And that was, again, the scrap that I had. So, but what about you, man? I mean, this was like probably one of the darker stories that we told. I know Tommy likes, lighthearted, happy endings. What did you think?
I liked the story a lot. I liked that we kind of defined this father's purpose and the story. And it's really a story that's built on the environment, like the locations, the things you see. I really like telling a story also that there's this crazy, magnificent thing happening, and that's not the center of the story. Like we don't really see the monster except briefly, if at all. And it's this story of, hey, I want to follow these people. What happens to these people when they're encountering that? Which that's the Tommy flavor right there of like one little conceit and how do real people react. So I was excited when you dropped it. Plus, we like kaiju. We like big monsters.
Oh, we're big. Yeah, we'll get to that. Obviously, this was our first foray into the kaiju genre. And if you like giant monsters, well, maybe it's just for you.
Just wait. Just wait until episode 4. But before that, we do have. Was there anything else you wanted to say about Megalophilia?
No. I think if you're into that type of thing, again, this is a more serious take on it, and one of our more serious episodes. I think we get into funnier things as we go on. So early episodes are going to be more dramatic for you folks, and so if you're into that kind of thing, and as a writer want to sit in that headspace and tell those stories, those are probably for you.
Yeah, definitely. Episode 3, I'm also going to let Zach introduce, because this was a scrap of his called Dig Deep, which I loved even from years ago when he first pitched me.
We had
this
conversations.
idea.
We had off mic before StoryFellas conversations about this one. So it goes way back. Kind of.
We didn't hash it out like in the episode. He just kind of gave me the premise of this story.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't even know what ended up happening to it. It just got dusty on the shelf until this podcast brought it to life. So Dig Deep is about a guy who basically can't take it anymore and introduces this reoccurring theme that Tommy and I have with our stories about remasculation. So you take a man who has lost touch with his male identity, whether it be as a father or as a son or as a husband. And in this case, it's 2 out of the 3 with our main character here. But he starts digging a hole in his basement for pretty much just weird psychological reasons. And it starts becoming basically a mine shaft. So imagine like American Beauty, Kevin Spacey, but without Kevin Spacey. Okay. We're going more Brendan Fraser here, before the weight gain. Let's put it that way. And yeah, he ends up like reconnecting with his family, his daughter and his wife through this episode. And it's obviously a dark comedy, it's a goofy concept. Something, as Tommy has said, that's a little off kilter, but the rest of the world is pretty normal. So we just had a ton of fun with that episode, and like every character and every line that we were coming up with just felt natural. And I loved it just because I obviously had this idea way back when, but to be able to flesh it out more, and I can go back to that episode, which I've done, and re-listen to it several times so that I can really glean what it is that we've come up with and hopefully bring Dig Deep to life. But that's not here nor there.
I love Dig Deep, man. It's such a fun story. It was fun telling this one because I think it was probably one of our first on this podcast comedies. While we have funny things happen in the other ones, but like there are more dramas or anything. So like hitting this comedy vein, which we like to laugh and we like to make each other laugh, I think works. Plus, it was this like just this connecting of like, we have our protagonist, his daughter, his wife, the pool boy, the lawn care guy. They all like clicked into place and all worked together, and it was very satisfying to see. So we do have to remind ourselves to not always tell a remasculator story, which is hard to avoid, audience. We're going to tell more of those in the future because that's natural. Like that's a natural plot point. You could go see the movies that are out now and past movies, and a lot of it follows that thing. It's someone who's like gone astray and has to find their purpose again.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to just be a guy. Like we obviously use remasculator because we're men and we're attracted to stories, and it's very easy to imagine stories where a guy has to rise up and take some sort of honor back, take back some sort of role that he has abdicated from. And those are, from my personal convictions, really important stories. And so I am attracted to them. And so, yeah, you're going to get a little bit more of that in this podcast, as you will see. But we tend to try and make it a good time either way.
Yep. Episode 4 is a favorite of mine, is Goldfork versus Kaiju, which this was, we actually recorded this later, but when we were launching this podcast, we wanted to move it up.
Yes.
So we moved it up, which then after the fact, friends of mine, Kate, if you're listening, you pointed this out to me. A lot of kaiju at the beginning of this podcast.
Deal with it,
but
Kate.
Hey,
deal with it.
This one,
Tommy's mom likes kaijus. Tommy's mom likes kaijus.
Probably. If you're listening to this, Mom, I don't know if you like kaijus, but
you like them more now. I know you like them more now. I know that's the truth.
You probably know what they are now if you didn't before.
Yeah.
But giant monsters. But Goldberg versus Kaiju was rolling on my board for the story game. It was something about like a letter gets delivered to somewhere it shouldn't have, which is kind of that classic, like, oh, this wasn't meant to be sent. And I think Zach, again, we learned very early on to not be married to the prompt. It's just something to get us going. I think you said, what if it's a will? And then I think that's the classic Manhattan episode where you said,
that's when what if we departed from being a coffee run show to being an alcohol run show.
It's just one.
Is the turning point.
Super.
It's just one. I'm not going crazy. Okay. I had a hot toddy before this. This is fine. I'm fine.
I don't remember exactly what you said. You were saying this might be the Manhattan talking, but was it something like, what if there's like a kaiju infested world that are destroying things? Something like that.
It was something to that, or the Power Ranger thing.
Yeah.
It might have been that
Sorry,
first.
I didn't even summarize this episode. Guys, if you want to listen to this one, Goldfork versus Kaiju. Goldfork is a lawyer for the off-brand Power Rangers. And when the Power Rangers die, they leave him in their will, all of their Megazords, all of their giant robots, and then he just has all of this. Yeah, it falls upon him, and him and his like nephew and niece have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, and he's played by Paul Giamatti, very famously, one of his favorite roles.
Yeah, he loves this role.
He's curmudgeonly Paul Giamatti, and I can't drive a Megazord. That's not a good Paul Giamatti. That's just an angry guy. That's just an angry guy doing his lawyer thing. But no, I thought that episode is peak StoryFellas, in my opinion. And, I'm sorry, Kate, if kaijus aren't your thing. I'm going to call you out again. Okay. They need to be your thing because of that episode. No. Because they're just cool. Like, I think I say it in the episode, or maybe Megalophilia, that kaiju are just the theme embodied. Like, Godzilla is atomic warfare, and it's ravaging the Japanese people. That's what's so cool about it. And it teaches you that like really simple storytelling thing, that if you bring in some element, it has to be thematically bound to make sense. It can't just be, oh, here's this shark eating people off the coast of Amityville. Oh no. No, it's indicative of Sheriff Brody's fear of the water. Okay. And yeah, I think kaiju are a very easy stepping stone into like great storytelling.
Yep. There will be more giant monsters down the road, guys. Just you wait.
So Goldfork versus Kaiju, episode 5 was a Tommy scrap. So if you want to cue that up.
Cadby is the title of that one. And the scrap originally was a young man who could read minds, who was kind of separated from the world, goes on a cross-country road trip to kind of discover how to live his own life and not just be on the sidelines. This is actually a story that I have a feature film wrote. I wrote a feature film in college for this, and if I'm being honest, it's a little weak because I wrote it under a deadline and I was younger and I would do things differently. But
first timer, come on,
full feature. And we reworked it. Zach introduced the idea of he runs away with the circus instead of just goes on a road trip. And really, I feel like the strongest point of the news story is the ringleader, this eccentric, crazy ringleader guy.
Yeah, I like that.
It kind of is like this like weird father figure, but not that good of a father figure.
Yeah, he's the like antithesis. He's Cadby if he's the shadow of Cadby. So he's the version of him if he kind of gave up trying to be good. That he's just a sleazy guy. I'm your Professor X, I think was the line that we pulled from along the lines. And I like that a lot. It's just so pathetic. And obviously very high of himself, high view of himself. But I think my favorite part was that the love interest doesn't speak English, so he can't read her mind.
Yeah, I think you threw that into the mix where she speaks like she either doesn't speak English or she speaks like every language, I think is what we might have landed on. And because of her language stuff, he can't clearly read her mind, which creates an interest in Cadby. But
yeah,
I liked it. It had like a lot more. I think we kept saying it's very putting it in a Tim Burton-y kind of movie.
Pushing it at that, totally.
Yeah, make it a kind of like weird, quirky,
Big Fish
creepy,
style.
But not creepy. Yeah, is Big Fish Tim Burton? Did he? I think
it's produced by him. Might be directed by him. I can't remember.
It's got some Tim Burton flavor. I never really thought about that, but yeah. No, but I
directed by Tim Burton. I just looked it up.
Okay, nice. It does feel like Tim Burton. I liked the direction we went. It was cool to just kind of take this story that in theory was already like, in a sense, completed to one degree and like rework the bones of it. Take all those bones out and put them in different places. You know?
I think
like doctors do.
Yeah, that's what doctors do, right? This isn't a doctor podcast. I don't care. Medicine isn't real. Doctors aren't real. It doesn't matter. No, I really think the lesson from that one, which is cool, is just like push the weirdness. You know, if you're telling and that's obviously Tommy and Zach, it's our Venn diagram, you know, is this get a little weird in here, baby. That makes it interesting, and you can tell a story about normal things. That's like Tim Burton's whole thing, is like you can tell a story about normal America by showing you the weird.
Yeah. I think the thing I've said in the past is Tim Burton, all of his weird, scary protagonists are the least scary things in the world, because it shows the normalcy is what's scary in his movies.
Yes.
But anyway, that's enough about Cadby. We got to move on to Nobody's Perfect, our episode 6. Do you want to tell us what this is, Zach?
Yeah, so the logline real quick is when Caroline discovers that her husband has actually been a robot, she sets out on a quest to find real love, no matter how imperfect it may be. I think this was a really good thematic bone that we had throughout the entire thing. And I'm really proud of the title. And just kind of how that snapped together. But we had a lot of fun with this one. Again, kind of an off-kilter world where this woman finds out that her parents set her up with a robot because they didn't think that she'd be able to marry a real human. And so he ends up getting hurt. And he's like the perfect guy, too. And she finds out he's a robot. And hilarity ensues where he's kind of like still around, but she gets patched in with this giant corporation's basically complaint department. And then ends up being with other people who are unmatchable. And yeah, like you can't return your robot. So you end up being with these folks who basically are too picky to find love. And it's kind of how love isn't about perfection. Obviously, the title is Nobody's Perfect.
Yeah, I really liked Nobody's Perfect. I think it was a lot of fun. I think, again, comedy, we have a ton of fun in. Just this robot rips his arm off. She needs to figure out this. And we got to introduce this kind of really weird world of this kind of her-esque world where it's the future, but not very future. Yeah, a lot of fun. One of my favorites in the past.
Yeah. I think it was one that we started to realize we're world building guys. We're world building fellas. Or we can get really zeroed in on that. And I think it's important because you can tell a ton of stories in that type of world where, you know, okay, robots are indistinguishable from humans. And I don't know, but we decided to tell a comedy because we think it's funny. So, yeah.
Yep. All right. Episode 7 was Everybody Loves Pizza, which was a scrap from Zach. So I will let him tee that up.
Yeah. So this was, again, born out of having an absolutely fat stack Evernote of ideas. And this is one that just always pops up in my mind because I pulled like Shia LaBeouf's mugshot for it because I had cast him in my mind. And it's just this goofy scruffball kind of picture. But Everybody Loves Pizza is about a pizza boy who takes over a route that is overcome by a gang war. So he basically just is like driving between the Blood and the Crips, you know, delivering pizzas, and eventually like learns how to cook from them and wants to be a chef, I think was one of the main ideas we'd landed on. And his bosses are actually like Italian mobsters who run the whole thing. And I don't know. I love the one line of that. There's a Fed guy, I think played by Louis C.K. He comes out of canceled retirement and is just like devouring giant pieces of pizza. And the main mobster guy is like, well, if he's a Fed in my house, he's going to be a well-fed Fed.
Yep. That was a good line. I liked that line a lot. I liked the story. The story was fun. What stood out to me, us telling the story, is when it clicked, the food thing is what clicked, because there was kind of all these like separate ideas of people making food, and we were really struggling. We're like, what ties all of these people together when they're at odds? And then we kind of came to the conclusion, oh, it's food, which leads into the title. But then through cooking, through culinary stuff, it unites these people in a way that the story was not leading on its own.
Yes. And I think that's also just universally true that, I mean, cooking shows are exploding, you know, cooking YouTube channels. People love food. They love learning about different cultures. I think tacos have kind of taken over America. I know this is like a small little stump speech I have, but just like street food has taken over America and like food trucks and stuff like that. Food trucks are a little past their prime, I think. But yeah, this idea that like okay, we don't agree on politics, we don't agree on theology, but we could sit down and both agree that this is the best burger in Manhattan or whatever, like, or best slice of pizza.
Yeah, people love food, man, and they can sit around a table and hey, there's a reason in the Bible they kept on sitting around tables. They kept on having these conversations over meals and things like that. People would
if you break bread with people, man, it's a big deal. So that's the heart of that one too. It's like a really heartwarming story underneath the gang warfare and all of that. Like I think that's actually an interesting idea. Is like to tell the stories of unity, you have to show the divide. You have to show like absolute divide between people. And so this like scruffy white boy on a bike delivering pizzas to gang warfare ridden Chicago or wherever we had said it. And you just show how everybody's just trying to make it work. I again, a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. I like it. Episode 8 was Previous Owner, which I believe was this wasn't a scrap. I think it was a on your board.
It was a title
maybe.
On my board.
Yeah, it was a title on your board. Yeah, that's how we started.
Yeah. We rolled on my board for the story game, and previous owner, previous title. Give me a break.
Previous title
was the one that you landed on, and in classic Tommy fashion, you made it quite magical.
Previous Owner ended up being a story about a haunted car that is haunted by Tyler, who's like maybe a generation behind the new owner, Milo. And it's kind of this buddy comedy in a sense where Tyler he can only exist in the car. So he's trying to teach Milo how to be cool in a modern era, but he doesn't know what it means to be cool in a modern era. And
doesn't even really, he knows what anime is. We always get wrapped around the anime axle here, but do you know what anime is or do you not?
Yeah, but then we explore him thinking he was murdered and not quite remembering, having kind of this amnesia, and them trying to work together to figure that out, to find out it was potentially a sadder ending. Yeah. So it does deal with, like, this one was probably one of our first that deals with, like, even though the movie at its core is a comedy, it kind of deals with some heavier topics. I feel like because it deals with dealing with high school, it deals with kind of suicidal stuff. So be warned if that's triggering. That might not be the one for you. We don't harp on that. It's more of a comedy and the ghost buddy comedy stuff.
This is when you start to really get a feeling that I love devastation, emotional devastation specifically. Obviously kaiju devastation, that fits the bill too. But the idea of like, okay, you need some solid contrast. That's what humor allows. It allows the light to the darkness. Or, we're going to give you some relief to some sort of internal stress or whatever it might be. So this definitely hits that. And it's satisfying. It is very satisfying. And I think, it goes to show that you can't have good comedy without truth. And that's a Billy Wilder quote, or there was one that you really like. Oh, are you going to say it?
This came up at work today as well. I used this quote at work today. Do you want to share the quote real quick?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact wording, but it's if you're telling people the truth, make them laugh or they'll kill you.
Yeah. I did some research. I feel like there's a mixed bag of where it came from because a lot of people attribute it to Billy Wilder. Other people attribute it to Oscar Wilde. So as long as Wilde is in their name, apparently
either way,
it's right.
They're Wilde, yeah.
But there's a lot of truth to that because people don't want to. The truth's abrasive sometimes, and they don't want to face the truth. So making it coding it in humor lets them accept it way easier than
of course
if they were just going
to take them.
The hard truth.
It disarms them. We really start getting a footing for that type of thing. Not that we tell like the most truthful story ever in Previous Owner, but we allow the character to go where I feel like he needs to go, and then we relieve it with some humor. So
we also have one of our biggest laughs in that episode.
Yeah, we do.
If you want to go
really
at the very
good.
end, it's pretty. We laughed pretty hard at a conclusion we ended up in, but I'm not going to tell you. You got to go. You can go check it out.
Listen to it, man. You got to go listen to it. Next one up is we did the games we play, episode 9. which is a science fiction film, science fiction comedy, maybe. I don't know. Science fiction horror. I think we push it into horror for the third act.
Yeah, it's like a comedy horror. I kind of get Shaun of the Vibe.
That's fair. Yeah.
Shaun of the Vibe. Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was I think was a story game. I can't remember the prompt exactly. Yeah, it was. Because I remember we did a big pivot when we figured out that it's like somebody stuck in a video game. The general blog line is this, folks. The son of a video game designer starts to uncover a mystery about his father's past. Doesn't give you a whole lot, but we're like set in college, I think. Kid goes to school, takes a video game, like history of video games class, and learns that the professor, I think, has locked his previous partner, I guess, like game partner in a video game. And that guy gets out and is all sorts of crazy.
Yeah. At first it was this mystery where they're using the clues of the video game, but then it pivots to they get the guy out and he can control people's bodies. So it's kind of this weird like comedy horror thing. Yeah. I thought it was fun. It was a lot of pivots, but I like where we landed in that one.
Yeah. I think that again, that kind of third act genre shift is something that we talked about a lot in that episode, where it's like, no, I think it actually needs to be scary. Like he's a zombie. He ends up taking over like a cadaver in the med school wing or whatever, and is like walking around and is all crazy with like an N64 cartridge in his head.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a fun one. Dude, episode 11 is Earl the Squirrel, which is...
we skipped 10. You skipped 10.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, everybody.
Take that back, Tommy. Take that back.
I take it back. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Earl the Squirrel's coming up next, y'all. Episode 10 is Wants, Wishes, and Desires, which is a
Tommy's
story.
Least favorite title.
Yeah, I was not a huge fan of this title, but hey, you win some and you lose some, guys. This was a genie story, which we love genies, and it's surprising that this is the first genie story that we tell. But a shot putter in college, discovers a genie lamp with a genie inside named Basma, and it's this kind of like romantic something. Like it's like there's
triangle because he's after
this girl that he wants, but then at the same time he has a friend who wants him. Classic triangle thing.
Yeah.
But then
square at that point, because then there's the other guy who's
Javier
Hovelin.
Javier the Hovelin thrower.
Yeah, we remember it. Yeah.
But then it's lo and behold, Basma is a special type of genie that once she grants her full 3 wishes, that she will devour the owner of the lamp. So they run into some tricky business towards the end.
She's fattening you up on misery. Yeah. That kind of thing. It's like Bedazzled a little bit. And I remember distinctly saying that we needed Basma. One, I think Basma might be the single best naming of anything we've ever done.
Basma's pretty good.
I can't think of another character name besides Goldfork.
Goldfork,
I don't know what was. I mean, the Manhattan was speaking that night, folks. I don't even remember that episode. But the Basma is just like, it feels like a dark genie.
Basma is a good name. It's a good name.
Again, a comedy, and pretty action packed. Gets kind of horror-y there at the end, but ends up landing on his feet.
Zach, do you want to tell them what episode 11 Earl the Squirrel is based on?
I will. Yeah. So I had a skit idea that was just floating around. This is a scrap. I cannot remember why the skit popped in my mind, or the idea. I think probably I was just using the bathroom somewhere. But the skit idea is that a guy is using the bathroom in like a heavily graffitied, rest stoppy kind of place. And, he is just minding his own business, right? He's just sitting in there. And then from underneath the next stall, some hands are like snapping. Hey kid, can you give me some toilet paper? And he's like, oh yeah, man. And he goes to hand him some, but he sees the hand waiting there has Nazi written across the knuckles. It's like a heavily tattooed hand. And the kid freaks out because he's like, oh, it's a Nazi, Aryan Brotherhood guy. And so he just leaves him. And he's like, kid, don't leave me. And that's the whole start. So if that appeals to you, I will tell you no more about this idea. You just go with it, because it is certainly a wild ride.
Yeah, it's a very wild ride. It was a lot of fun. I re-listened to this one not too long ago, and I think it's just really funny and silly, and you guys should just go listen to it because it starts this weird buddy adventure. And I'm not gonna go in too deep into it. You should just check it out. You should just check out Earl the Squirrel. Episode 12, I believe. Yes, episode 12 is Bug York City.
Oh,
Zach, you want to cue up what this was?
The big rotten apple, Bug York City. Bug York City. Again, this is world building, fellas. Like, I don't even know, going crazy, basically, that we get caught up in this world. I don't know if the story is even that impressive, to be totally honest, but the world is really interesting. So the general plot, though, is that a retired math professor goes missing after the death of his wife. His daughter, who's the main character, follows his tracks, but she ends up falling through a portal into Bug York City, a city run by giant anthropomorphic bugs. So she's realizing that her dad has lived a double life a little bit, that he's been kind of a secret agent, a little Men in Black, a little RIPD style thing. And there's just a city populated by amazing special effects puppets, in my mind, of these bugs. And they have to basically, I think we had the dad character, Willem Dafoe, hunting down this Mothman to try and reclaim the soul of his wife, because he's like, my wife's not dead. She just had her soul taken by this Mothman.
Yeah, it was again, I agree. The story probably needs more meat on the bones, but the world is super fun. Like, we really played around with like what it's like a bar, and there's like all these bugs in it and all. Yeah,
a centipede
Yeah, I think it's the world is really cool. And sometimes when we only got an hour, sometimes we got to focus on certain aspects. And with Bug York City, a world made of bugs, I think the world needs some extra attention.
Oh yeah.
So I liked Bug York City. I also love the name Bug York City. I think that's really fun.
I remember you really liking Block, the supporting character.
Block was like my favorite. He was like Hercules beetle that was like human sized, bigger than human, and just like big old, like the big old horn on their head.
Yeah.
And he was like Willem Dafoe's old partner. Yeah. Old cop partner. So,
and he helps Shelley, navigate the city or whatever. And he's like, you shouldn't be here. But they've met before, because like he went to the human world and he was just like a little beetle.
Yeah. He's like, you didn't squish me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so cool. I've been playing with the AI images. It's a part and parcel of what StoryFellas is, that I can continue the world in AI, and a lot of our posts, all of them actually, are me playing with that. And that one was just tons of fun, just playing with different types of bugs and whatnot, and landed on something weird, obviously. But yeah, go back and look at some of these posts too, because like if any of these stories appeal to you, go look at the AI thing. I think it's a helpful little nugget that you can take as you enter this world. And on that note too, we make podcast accompanying playlists. So for every episode of StoryFellas, we have a Spotify playlist made that you can kind of continue a sonic adventure, so to speak, in this world.
Zach is very good at making these AI images and making these playlists. So give them a listen, give them a watch, because it really immerses you into these worlds that we have created.
Most of the time. We'll see.
Most of the time. It's going to be great. Follow the links in the show notes to go check out all that stuff. Episode 13 is our first full-on kind of horror, The Shore, which is a story about this family. I think the prompt was off of my board. It was like a sibling that no one seems to remember, or something along those lines. But
stop saying it.
It ended up being this. Can't stop saying it. This family goes to their beach house, and you got like the happy classic family, like two daughters, parents, and they're super happy. But this weird stuff keeps happening. They keep having visions of alternate lives of theirs, and come to find out they are not a family. They have kind of been like wiped, and for some sort of experiment or entertainment. And they are slowly getting their real memories back, and they're trying to escape this situation. Yeah. which is like crazy and like sounds really suspenseful. Like this, it might be a movie that I couldn't handle, man.
Yeah, I think it was after that one we off mic you were talking and some noise happened outside and you got really scared and you were like,
yeah, like Shaggy from Scooby Doo. But
shaking people.
But that did happen. Like there was a noise out the side, and it's like whenever I like watch something that's kind of borderline scary or even talk about stuff, I just get like weirdly on edge, and it was weird. I was like, "Am I gonna get eaten right here while Zach watches me?"
That happens to me all the time. I'll wake up in the middle of the night. You know, you just wake up. You don't know why you're waking up, and I got the fear juice just pumping from my brain, and you wake up and you're like, there are just people trying to get into my house right now. And you walk around, you check all the doors, you check all the windows, you hear something. Oh man, it's so scary. It's so scary. And yeah, you throw in watching something scary on top of that. And it's like, the older I get, and I have kids now too. So it's just, you think about that stuff and I don't have a stomach for it anymore. Like horror films. It's definitely like a 13-year-old Zach type thing.
Yeah, it's funny because it like just puts you in a headspace of being scared and paranoid, and then it's like I'm not normally afraid of these things, but then I am now. So yeah, I'm not a big scary movie guy, but it was fun to tell this story. The Shore was a lot of fun to crack open. The next episode here, 14.
Oh,
which is
after 13.
One man's trash.
Oh yeah, this one was just born out of like the purest StoryFellas interaction.
Yeah, this was no prompt, nothing. Like we were literally joking around before we officially started the show.
We had just been recording for no real purpose. We had just gotten sidetracked, and it ended up spawning a whole story based on a real true life thing where this guy lost a hard drive full of Bitcoin and it's worth, hundreds of millions of dollars now. And so he's hired like the city and all sorts of people to look through this dump to find it. And we're like, well, what if some dump workers actually found it, but they couldn't get into it because they don't have his password. And so they need to like reverse heist up a password from him. And yeah, it's a fun little heisty thing. And we end up back into very familiar territory, dark comedy. But it is again a good one. And I think this is another one where we started to like really figure out our naming thing.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean? Like how we title
our names. Yeah. Well, that too. Yeah. The title thing as well, but like naming characters. I think we named everybody with the letter C. And it was just like, okay. All right. We need to like, break the formula here. But yeah, titling things too, because at the end of every episode, if you've never listened to one and somehow you made it all the way into this one, we do an along the line segment where we come up with a line from the story and we title it. And sometimes Tommy and I disagree on the title, not fervently, but enough. Off mic, we fight each other.
Usually, yeah.
Bug York City.
I hate
Bug York City.
I hate this guy off mic.
Yeah,
but no, we've never really had a huge argument. Usually one of us bends and yields, and it makes the story better in the long run. Speaking of long run, the next one, episode 15, is The Long Rage, which was a very
it's our longest episode.
Kind of like we hit our hit. Is it? It might be.
I think so. I haven't looked, but it felt like it.
This one we rolled off of Zach's board, which the idea originally sounded funny of someone who does
it
like
was a funny
DNA test.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You wanted? I was going to just say rolls a. No, actually, you tell me the prompt that it started. You remember better.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a comedic scrap that I had of a woman who gets a DNA test back. She does like Ancestry.com and it says that she's 15% Neanderthal. Yeah. Which I think is just like somehow like Geico ads like smashed into my mind into one prompt. Like if you think about it, because it's 15% more on car insurance or whatever, plus the caveman thing. And then I just realized now that that's probably where that came from, which is hilarious.
Yeah, it was funny, and I feel like we were going to steer it to a funny thing, but then we ended up steering it to she visits some kind of like far off country, Icelandic or something country, to discover her roots after the passing of her mother. Come to find out, The Long Rage is the name of these Neanderthals, that like immortal Neanderthals that live
yeah.
nearby that the townspeople
Another
are
horror
terrified
film.
of.
So
Yep.
we got horrors
Yep.
like back to back basically, and that was one that was also pretty scary. It's pretty spooky. But I like cavemen are scary. You know, I don't believe in them, but they're scary.
I don't believe in that. Like, I'm just picturing like modern days. Like there was a caveman. There's a caveman outside.
No, just picture a scary night at the museum.
Yeah. I do think we did have a joke of like this really like tool of a boyfriend who was there, and he's like, I'm gonna go talk to these guys, and then Neanderthal just like clubs him with one hand and just smithereens him.
Yeah, I think you get our disdain for the horror genre. I enjoy it, like especially just coming up with ideas because we have a few more in this list, but or at least that unreleased maybe even. But yeah, I just the A24 like satanic kind of psychosexual type thing, not my thing. Not my thing. Not Tommy's thing. And we really hit that you know, because the story I think wanted to be that kind of thing. And so we were fighting it tooth and nail. And we ended up with The Long Rage, and I really like it.
I like it too. Episode 16. Zach, you teed up our Cleary Jones. You want to explain how you teed that one up?
Again, just some idea, some note on my phone about anthropomorphic mice being a big childhood thing for me, with the mouse and the motorcycle, Stuart Little, and a couple of other properties, I think Red Wall, that we talked about, that we're like, what if we took that into modern day and we continue the story of something like Stuart Little, and, you know, we made it sad and devastating per my requirements. And yeah, I think it's just a cool, like, satire almost of the modern world through the eyes of this kind of beloved archetype of a humanoid mouse.
Yeah, it was fun. It's fun to take that genre of like a really sad story, but the main character's a anthropomorphic mouse.
That's
it's
true.
Like,
yeah,
it's funny. Like the story is not funny, but it's funny that we're doing it. You know?
Yes.
Like the story is
it's
still
almost like
sad.
BoJack Horseman a little bit, where it's like, I know that them being animals is a thing, and it's somewhat acknowledged, but it's also like you could imagine it not being that way, and it's its own thing. That it has a little bit of that feel. So if BoJack is your thing, maybe Cleary Jones is your thing.
Yeah, check it out. Check it out. Episode 17 is Flicker, which is one I really liked. I think I came to the table and I said I wanted to make a story that takes place primarily in a grocery store. And we ended up with this story of a grocery store and these people hunkered in it, and outside, like, something happens and outside is just infinite darkness and these Mothmen who are just peering into the light, and no one knows how to get out and how to escape. The protagonist is this drunk that has to, again, remasculator, has to learn how to step up and take care of these people and kind of save the day at the end.
Sacrifice himself, a masculine virtue, self-sacrifice for sure. Not just a masculine virtue, but, you know, we played with the idea that it's all in the 70s and he's a Vietnam vet and maybe a coward. And that's why he's actually got this wound as a character, that he wants to drown himself and drown the light in himself. And in the end, I won't ruin it, but, you know, redeems himself. I guess that kind of ruins it.
It was a cool world building inside this grocery store of these scary Mothmen and this cast of characters that would stay inside. And I liked it. I thought it was cool. The visuals stand out to me in this movie a lot.
Yes. Oh yeah. I think we discovered a little bit of another creative hang up that we have besides the remasculator plots. We love Mothmen, we love genies, we love kaiju, and we love taking loser dudes and making them cool again.
That's kind of it.
That's definitely our shtick, you know. But I obviously enjoyed it, and as a Mothman fan, you know, it's cool to put him in things or something like him anyway. For those who don't know, Mothman is a cryptid I won't spoil it for you, but he's spooky.
Episode 18, we have Ambi Sinister. Zach, you want to tell us about that one?
Yeah, Ambi Sinister is about a bodyguard and his daughter who get swept up in his boss's kind of corporate espionage, corporate plot, where the boss is like an inventor type CEO who has invented a gravity device, gravity controlling device. And so there's all sorts of people trying to kill him, and his bodyguard has to go on the run, taking his daughter with him to save her life. And this is one that I think we really learned our lesson in terms of when the story wants to do something, and it's even like just pops in your head as like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that. Like, oh, this seems like it should happen. You just roll with it, man. You roll with it. That story gravitational pull, no pun intended for this story. You should follow it for sure. I don't know if we should give you any spoilers on it because I think it's that good of a turn.
Yeah, you should just go check it out because it is, I agree with Zach, it is a distinct thing where we were having trouble getting through the story and figuring out what to do. And then it was like, it might have even been presented as a joke. And then we realized like, oh, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing we need to go do. And it really unlocked the rest of the story for us.
Yeah. We had a great character as well. Carmichael is the CEO guy, and he's just a crazy kind of loser type, not loser insofar he's got no money or anything, but he's more of a man child. I think that's an interesting character to play with that has this gravitational ability or whatever. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Superhero-esque.
That is superhero-esque. Episode 19 is Fluke, our skeleton detective. This was based on a image Zach sent me a long time ago. Yeah, we used to play the story game.
This is the oh wait, then what one was the one where we did the guy shaving?
Ambi Sinister was that. Zach on air sent me an image on Ambi Sinister, and we built a whole story on that. Fluke, way before we did this podcast, Zach would send me images and we'd make up stories. He sent me this image of this like skeleton in the city with a trench coat, like smoking a cigarette. And we used that to basically come up with this idea of Fluke, which is we kind of had a rough story a long time ago back in the day, but basically it's a story of this guy who doesn't solve the murder case in the 1800s or so, and he is cursed to be partially immortal. His skin and everything passes away, but his skeleton and his consciousness stays present. And then we're in modern day where he kind of meets with a bumbling cop and finds a way to like uncrack a new mystery. So it's kind of this buddy comedy with a bumbling cop and a really experienced detective who happens to be a skeleton in modern day. We
like our magical realism.
It was fun.
Yeah, and Fluke is another great name, and that's the detective Fluke. And again, another one where we consistently hit you with the kind of devastating realities with these characters, and that allows it to be funny too. Again, I won't ruin it, but if all these things sound cool, a little bit more of a world building thing. But yeah, proto StoryFellas origin on that one.
Yep. And that brings us up to episode 20, or probably right before this episode, Howling Hill.
Yeah.
You want to tee it up, Zach? Where this came from?
Did I write a log line for that last time? Where is this log line?
Yeah, I've got one. Do you want me to read it for you?
Have it? Yeah, go for it. Read it. Yeah, read it. Because I liked how we crafted it. We took after the episode, we actually took the time to write it, and I think it pays off.
Yep. This is what we ended up with. After finding a buried facility during one of their live streams, a group of scrappy urban explorers are thrust into a fight for survival when they realize it's a safe house for a pack of hyper-rich werewolves.
Yeah. So let that speak for itself, man. Again, that's a storytelling tip. If you can't tell an interesting story in one sentence, you can't tell it in 90 minutes. And I think that log line is one of our best for sure. Obviously, I like all of this.
I think so too.
There's no real conflict in this episode of StoryFellas, but we are just going down the line and giving you a little bit of a look at our filmography, our catalog here. And if anything is interesting, I mean, from horror, which is this one as well, we really are starting to get into it. And I think we make it work. We find it interesting from our own like convictions and perspective. But this one, I texted you about it actually afterwards. It was just like a couple of days afterwards. I was like, it's really good, dude. And I'm not just saying that because this is our podcast and blah, 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 blah. But to come up with this story within this format, it's very balanced. We manage like 5 characters, something magical like a werewolf, and then the setups and payoffs all seem to come together, and then set us up for something that might even tease a sequel.
Ooh. No, I really like this one too. This one came out really nice. I think it was based on a thing we were planning a long time ago, and I think it was me that kind of pitched the idea of like someone who breaks into a house and then the owner comes back and they turn into a werewolf, and it turns out the house is guarded like inward, so like the werewolf can't get out, and then this person's trapped in the house with them, and then we turned it into this with the hyper rich werewolves live streamers. And I like it. It's really cool. It's really unique. And yeah, these are our 20 stories, and guys, we're going to keep making more. We're going to keep telling stories. But Zach, I want to talk to you about this process. We've told 20 like hour-long stories. What has changed for you? Like, has anything changed as far as your storytelling technique? Have you learned anything about how you do things?
I think just we've mentioned it along the way, just things that I'm attracted to, which is actually a big hang up for, I think, a lot of younger writers is not like, what do I want to tell a story about? What do I care about? And some people know that, without really having to introspective navel gaze about it. Not me. I'll just sit there indecisively and think of stories over and over and over again. Whereas this allowed like a rinse and repeat format that I could see like, okay, I really do like genies. I like werewolves. I like losers. Kaiju are cool. Those types of things. Also, sorry, I'm sick. So I'm like, talking is like lowering my voice, and I'm not doing it on purpose. It's just getting harder to talk. Anyway, but coughs are funny, man. Coughs are a funny type of sickness, There's other sickness that isn't funny. Diarrhea is not funny. Coughing is funny. So anyway, I think that would be the main thing, is just being more comfortable with stories that I'm attracted to naturally. But what about you, man?
There's a couple things that I've learned through doing this. One is that building confidence in us getting to the other side of it, because there are some episodes where I do not know if we're going to land on our feet, but we always do. We always get to a place that I feel good about where the story landed, which is cool, because like, man, if we can always do that in an hour, then it means we can figure it out. Like we can workshop it until it gets there. 2, telling stories that I classically probably wouldn't be interested in telling. Like I wouldn't peg myself as a horror movie anything, but I've enjoyed telling some of those stories with you, doing genres that I wouldn't necessarily broach myself. And it's like, okay, it's not so bad. It follows the same logic. You're just dealing with different tones and different types of beats. And I think the third thing for me is it's kind of rewired some of my storytelling technique. As I was mentioned when I was working with my wife and just talking to her about the story, I literally said, I was like, I'm going to drop something. This is a very Zach Lovelace flavor of a thing. And I dropped something, and it's like it's a devastating thing. Like it was like something that was very heavy, that dropped into the middle of the story I'm talking to her about. And she was like, that's awful, but that works. Like that makes the story work. And it's things that I probably wouldn't have done on my own, but working with you a lot, I was like, sometimes the devastation does work. Sometimes you do drop that and it's exactly what the story needs. It's like adding something super spicy into a dish. And then you're like, that's what it needed though.
Oh yeah,
It
or
needed
pinch of
that
salt.
super
It's
spice.
just the contrast for sure, and I appreciate that. I take that as a compliment. I think something that popped in my mind when we were talking about doing this episode was that it is when we're bouncing off of each other, you become like each other. It's like a marriage. You become like each other over time, and so just like, oh, the stories that I know will be a Tommy thing. And I'll introduce things knowing that Tommy will be interested in them, but also because I'm interested in them. And so then it becomes the Venn diagram gets wider and wider, and eventually we'll be the same person. And then we're one big story fella.
Just one bigger story fella.
Yeah, we're just one
the
large
story fella podcast.
Yeah, story feller at that point. Yeah,
but yeah, cool. I'd encourage people out there who are telling stories and working on it. I don't think it's something. I think you're going to grow slower if you're doing it alone. You need to find people who can speak the language and you can count on and trust and bounce things off of, because that feedback, or even taking a story that you don't really want to take it, not being so precious with your story, because we're bringing scraps to each other, and it'd be really easy for us to be like, that's not how my story goes. But being open to see, like, where does this change lead? What happens if we do go this direction? Does the world make sense? Does it make it more captivating? Does it raise the stakes? Yeah.
Yeah. And you get, again, you find things that you are interested in over time, because you're like, oh, I think I want to go this way. And you can actually use that to your advantage now. And we've done it where it's like, we're not going to do a story about a guy. It's a female protagonist now.
Yeah. I actually think
deliberate choices.
I think that was Nobody's Perfect that stood out the most, where we were working with a guy protagonist, and then we felt like we're doing the same thing. We're going to do, like, tell a very similar story, and we just swapped the genres, or not the genders. We made it a female protagonist. And sometimes it's as simple as that. It's like changing one key thing. You're just like, well, what if I just flip that on its head? What if instead of this being a horror, it's a comedy? And it makes the whole recipe work after that.
I agree. I want to ask you, before we go any further, what is your one favorite out of this top 20 that you would revisit and you would actually write?
That I would actually write? There's a couple of these that I feel like I would be interested in writing, but I'm coming through this real quick.
No worries.
I think I would, there are actually a couple that I would, but I think the one that I brought up to you in the past that I think I would write and feel like immediately drawn to is Nobody's Perfect, the one about a woman who accidentally marries a robot and tries to find real love. Because it's just, when we told that one, like, it's such a funny world. It's just a funny stakes. Her robot husband's still missing an arm and living in her house. And there's like so much. It's like, it's like, I think we said Chris Hemsworth would play him ideally. It's just, I don't know. It's just rich with this like rom-com energy, this like quirky sci-fi stuff. And I think that one really speaks to me. And if I had to choose one runner up, again, there's a lot of these that I would be interested in, but I think, oh shoot, man. You know what, Nate, you tell me yours. What is yours? Which one would you write?
No, yeah. I think keeping it with your one is good. It's good.
Nobody's Perfect is my knee-jerk reaction for.
That's your knee-jerk. I put a gun to Tommy's head, and I said,
"Fine, I'll write Nobody's Perfect."
Yeah, please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. Yeah. Let's see. That's a great question. I should have thought about it before I asked you.
Before you pegged it on me.
Yeah. I think my knee jerk would be something like Bug York City, because I love the world so much. But like I said before, I don't like the plot that we really came up with. I've thought about that world since then and just thought of other stories. But that's a cop out, obviously. I think honestly, Goldfork versus Kaiju would have to be it. Just an early pop off, like we'd StoryFellas perfect prime thing where I'm like, that just had everything good about it. Yeah. And I don't know. I think that's a fun one that I want to work with Paul Giamatti. Okay. Paul, this is for you. I know you listened to that episode.
He's just waiting. He's just thinking about it. He's just like, he's hovering over an email that says at StoryFellas. And he's looking at the message type, but he's like, I can't.
He's listening to this episode. He gets to this point, and I can't make it without you, man. I'm waiting for Paul Giamatti, fresh off his Oscar nom from The Holdovers. I need you in this. But anyway,
if Paul Giamatti emailed you tomorrow and you just, I think you would jump immediately into writing this piece. He's like, it's just, course. I'm in. If he's like, if you write this, I'm
That's
in.
it. Yeah. Send the script. You have 3 days.
I think you'd be like, Tommy, I need you to take some PTO. We need to work on this. So we need to work on this.
I would transcribe. I would get some transcription stuff. I would take the transcription from that episode. I'd feed it to ChatGPT or Claude, either or, and I would have AI write the world's dirtiest, nastiest first draft. Just because AI sucks, people. Okay, you heard it here first. AI sucks. As a writer, I do it by day trade as a copywriter. It sucks. Okay, it would write the just most dumb. I can't say what I want to say. Okay, Tommy's got me muzzled here, people. But I would write that, and then I would take it and I would just cut it up and I'd write all my good scenes in there, but it would just organize it for me. I would just organize my screenplay. AI slave, organize my screenplay. So yeah, that's what I would do if that happened.
Yeah.
I'm confident I could write Gold Fork in 3 days. Will I do it after this? No.
I feel like, yeah, if given enough time, I think Gold Fork, I think any of these ideas deserve more than 3 days. Paul Giamatti's like, I guess it's all right, but
the episode was a little rough. Script. Actually, I am worried about that we go to write something and you finally realize you're like, oh, that actually just wasn't that good. I would hate that.
I think all of these have legs. I think it's just the concept.
Yeah, you just
I think I think I have a theory that any concept that is good with enough time and work could be a good full thing. Because it's like clearly like the concept, like people want, like people are interested. And that's like the thing. If I was just like, I've got a script of a guy who reads a phone book for 5 hours, people are like, no, like I don't like the concept of
How European of you. Get out of here. Nobody has a phone book anymore anyway. Although now that might actually be interesting.
Yeah, they're like, what's a phone book?
Yeah.
It sounds like a YouTube channel that probably exists, ASMR of a guy reading a phone book or something.
Zachary Appleton. I guess it would be Appleton Zachary. Trying to remember how the phone book is set up here, people.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's good. That's good. We should. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. You do your hosty thing.
I was just going to say, we went through our 20 episodes, guys. If you have audience, if you liked any of those, go please revisit them. Go give them a listen. Check them out. We have links in our show notes that you can check things out. You can see our Instagram. You can reach out to us. You can message us. We would love to hear from you guys and see, like, hey, what did you like? What are additional ideas that you have that could make a story work? We want to hear from you guys. We're always excited to hear from you guys. We want to build this storytelling community. And then we talked about how we've grown, but Zach, do you want to give them a little sneak peek on what the future of StoryFellas looks like?
Yeah. So we're going to do way more story games here, people. And we're going to be rolling on different boards, and we're going to have a lot more of that classic StoryFellas bread and butter. But we're going to bring some guests in. We're going to bring in a little bit of new blood, and just get some wild, crazy ideas or some bad ideas. I mean, we might bring people on just to tell them their ideas suck. That'll be interesting, right? No, I am actually really interested in bringing in different people and just taking them through the story game and allowing them to kind of work with us and help. We shepherd them through developing an idea that they might have. So we have that, and we have going kind of rewind episodes like this one, retrospectives, where we look back on certain specific stories. We have something that I'm really excited about, which is we're going to pick, I guess we've already picked them, but we're going to pick 2 of our favorites and write scenes from those movies. So you'll need to go back and listen to them to understand some of the context, and we'll do a little recap in it. Don't worry. But you'll get to hear a scene from Gold Fork versus Kaiju written by myself, and then also one written by Tommy, and then same with Nobody's Perfect and various other ones. And so, yeah, we're going to go back and actually like go a little deeper with some of these. It's not just simply an ideation podcast, but we're actually going to try and create something. And we want to hear you people as well. We want to hear you people, our audience, like, and your reactions to these stories. So if you want to write a scene, we would love to read it in a scene episode. I think we would even dedicate an entire episode to that if we were to get one. So whoever's listening out there, wherever you might be, I think last time we talked about a guy stuck in the woods and all he has is his dying phone and he decides to put on StoryFellas. That guy, don't write a scene, go find some fresh water. But everybody else who's listening, write a scene, man. And if there's one that sticks out to you, let us know. Comment on the Instagram page that we use, the AI images. Come up with your own AI images. I do really want to foster that creative community. Like, use us as your prompt board. And like we said, don't respect the prompt, respect the story. So take our stuff and use it as fuel, man. So that's a little bit of what you can expect, and a little bit of a stump speech there too.
Yep. Well said. Y'all, if you we appreciate you guys listening. This has started as a little project, an idea that me and Zach had talked about for a long time and turned into reality. And I think it's making us better storytellers. It's fun to create. It's fun to share with people, and share this with your friends. We're not at this time. Who knows in the future when we get that big money? But at this time, we're not doing any major advertisements or anything like that. So it's really word of mouth. If you like this, if this is your cup of tea, or you are into movies, or you are into writing and you like this, share this with people. Like, this is super organically shared. Like, send some of the Instagram stuff, send a podcast link, share it with others, because that's how I find podcasts, of friends telling me, hey, this was super cool and I really liked this. And then I hop in, because podcasts it's a wild west. It's hard to find podcasts. So if you like what we're making, share it with friends and share it with people you think would like it.
And on that note, I'm willing to extend a little bit of myself here, and say, hey, if you have a story idea that you are struggling with, or just even writer's block, email us, reach out. Like, we would love to be able to help you, and maybe even bring you on the show. Like, that's the type of community that this is that there's no real barrier to any of this stuff. So I would absolutely love to help you with your story. I can't speak for Tommy. Off the mic, he's like the meanest guy I've ever met. Oh, did I just say that? He's gonna edit this out loud.
It's recorded.
Anyway, like, it is a part of growing, not just listening, but like, reach out to us. And hopefully you're here for the next 20 and the 20 after that, and all the lookbacks and other types of non-story game episodes like this.
Yeah, we're here to tell some stories. It's been fun so far. I'm looking forward to what's coming next, and I'm looking forward to growing the community and getting plugged in, helping other people with telling their stories, workshopping stuff with people. And email us if you've got, even if it's not something you're working on, if you just have like a concept, if we're able to use it, maybe that will be on the prompt board. Maybe that will just be an episode where, like, hey, so-and-so sent this in, and we are wanting to help them build this into a stronger story. So we appreciate you guys.
It's going to have a genie.
It's got to have a genie or a kaiju. If it doesn't, it's not making it on the show.
Take the headphones out of your ears, step on them. Take your phone and throw it. And that's it, dude. If it doesn't have a genie in it, I don't care. Genie Fellas podcast.
Genie Kaiju, the podcast.
yeah, we're gonna have a genie kaiju. Okay, Anyway,
man, what a kaiju-sized genie. We gotta put that.
That's
in
cool.
story.
That's cool. The lamp is enormous.
It's so big, man. All right, y'all. I think that's been our recap look back episode. It's been fun to revisit these, and it's crazy that we told this many so far. And
yeah,
we hope you're liking them. Zach, do you have anything you want to say to the people before we go?
No, just thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and looking forward to seeing your stories and interacting with you in the future.
Well, guys, we usually end with an along the lines. That doesn't work when we don't have a story that we've told.
yeah.
But we'll make up a line for what we just said, Zach.
All right, I'll come up with a line. So Tommy says, Zach, you're the best writer in the world.
You're the best writer in the world.
And you have like really cool stories and like all your ideas
cool
and stuff.
Stories.
You really make this podcast
good ideas.
like like I love when you get drunk on the podcast and start yelling at me. I'm feeling better next episode. I'll put it that way. Here's an along the lines for you.
just this hour-long intellectual discussion about storytelling, and it ends with a fart joke. Thank you all for listening to StoryFellas, a part of the Pemmican Studios podcast network. Check out our show notes for bonus material, links, and more. To find out more about our current projects, send us messages, and suggest ideas for the show, go to StoryFellasPodcast.com. If you liked what you heard, share the show with a friend. Word of mouth is the best way to grow this community. Until next time, go make and break those stories.